Assalamu alaikum and good morning. I still have my phone on because I am going to read the biographies of our speakers from it shortly. But before I do that, and before I talk a little bit about this session, I want to pay tribute to someone who's not here, but who certainly would have been here and would have enjoyed being here immensely, especially after that address. An academic, Melbourne academic by the name of Patrick Wolfe. Patrick Wolfe passed away in February, but he was a tireless advocate for Palestinians. And I want to say just a little bit about him. Luckily for me, Australians for Palestine have already paid tribute to him, and I'm going to read out that tribute now before I get on to the session, so indulge me just for a moment. It takes a brave man to challenge history written by victors. Patrick Wolfe was such a man, and he did it from the standpoint of rigorous intellectual scholarship on settler colonialism. Palestine in particular was never far from his mind, and Palestinians and advocates for Palestine remember him with the greatest affection, admiration, and sadness. Patrick Wolfe's writings and lectures gave voice to the very real suffering and indignities to which indigenous people are subjected at the hands of settler colonists. His support for the Palestinian struggle against the Zionist colonization of their homeland went beyond just writing or speaking about it. He was also at the barricades, and he was never afraid to even make solo protests whenever and wherever he could. Unlike others who opt for safer and often equivocal grounds from which to hold Israel to account, Patrick embraced boycotts as a legitimate non-violent tactic and was a staunch supporter of the Palestinian-led boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. He was tireless and fearless in his pursuit of historical truth and moral integrity, often to the detriment of his own academic career. He never balked at taking a public stance for a just cause, so viciously maligned. He never said no when asked to speak, even when tragedy struck in his personal life. That said, his expertise and his research abilities were in much demand by prestigious academic institutions around the world, and he held many visiting positions. Patrick knew what it meant to lose his home, his belongings, and years of research in the terrible 2009 bushfires in Victoria. Yet at one Australians for Palestine event not long after, he said his loss was nothing compared to the relentless home demolitions visited upon the Palestinians due to the shameless policies of Zionist expansionism. That he even thought about others when he himself had lost everything is indicative of the man. Another time, he insisted on moderating a panel of academics and lawyers, an event that Australians for Palestine had organized after a highly publicized performance of Carol Churchill's controversial play, 7 Jewish Children. It's amazing how things get that label controversial attached to them, but anyway. Patrick was included on that panel and was eminently qualified to give his own views on the topic being discussed, but at the 11th hour he stepped in as moderator, and he did so graciously and authoritatively before a packed house. That was the mark of this generously spirited man. Patrick's scholarly output was prodigious. In 2012, he wrote an article for Arena Journal called New Jews for Old, State Formation and the Impossibility of Zionism, in which he wanted to register his debt to the great Palestinian intellectual Edward Said for giving him clarity on the Palestinian narrative from a Palestinian's perspective. In reaching his conclusion that a unified, secular, democratic Palestine-Israel state would not only dismantle Zionism, but would also dismantle settler colonialism, Patrick felt that Said would have approved. 3 years later, Patrick had 2 powerful new books published, and he ended one magnificent tour de force, his book Traces of History, Elementary Structures of Race, with a semblance of optimism. He said, the incompleteness of racial domination is the trace and achievement of resistance, a space of hope. We can only wonder what Patrick might have written further had death not taken him so suddenly. Perhaps the greatest tribute we can pay him is to seize that space of hope and keep shining a light on Palestine until truth and justice triumph. It is precisely what Patrick would have done.